it's a very humbling experience, to say the least. 1 minute you're like, there ain't no way this is not happening. And then the next minute you're just bawling to the point where you can't catch your breath. And you're like, what if? And you're thinking worst case scenario. And the thing, I think, the hardest part for me was in those 3 days, to me, hearing the C word or the L word, cancer leukemia, I thought that was it. I thought that was an end sentence, because you hear it, it scares you as a parent and as a person, and all the negative stuff that you hear and say. And the whole weekend, I was like, if he has it, I just lost my baby boy. And to me, that was the hardest part. Not knowing how far cancer treatments have come, not only with St. Jude's, which is, in my opinion, the best place in the world right now, but, just all across the board.
Today's episode is unique in that by the time that we recorded it in late October, the family had just received the diagnosis less than a month ago. There's a lot to unpack in today's episode. My name is Seth Carnell. This is the Go Shout Love podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Today we are talking with Taylor and Cassie, who are the parents to 8-year-old Jensen Lee. Now, Jensen was just diagnosed in late September with leukemia. So although this information in this story is new to us, it's also still very new to them. So there's a lot of very raw emotions that are being unpacked as they so graciously share their story with us today. They're going to tell you about Jensen's personality, his relationships with his siblings, and now the medical treatments that he is undergoing, which is 4 hours away in Memphis, Tennessee. Little side note, shout out to St. Jude's Hospital in Memphis. You'll find out why, but they've been incredible to this family, and we want to recognize that. Leading this conversation is Josh Veach, one of the co-directors of Go Shout Love, and I'm not going to delay this any further. We're just going to jump into the conversation. So here we go.
Taylor, Cassie, welcome to the Go Shout Love podcast. It's so good to have you on.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yes, we are getting to talk to you guys because your kiddo, your son, Jensen Lee, is we're featuring him in November, and we're excited to be shouting love for him all month long. But we want to get to know him, but then we also want to get to know a little bit about his journey that's got us to this spot for you guys. And so before we get into any medical stuff, just describe your kiddo to us. What's he like?
Well, he is my firstborn son. We share a 13-year-old that, she had from a prior marriage. So he's my firstborn. We're a very big sports family. So I was like, okay, I got my linebacker, he's a big kid, 90th percentile and everything. And I was like, he's going to come out eating nails and, punching kids. And that is not what I got. He is a big old boy. He's built like a linebacker, but he's got the heart of the kid that just wants to pick everybody up and, make sure that everybody's having fun and doing a good job, which I love that about him.
He's very loving, very compassionate.
Yeah.
He would rather play with the grasshopper, that's flying around than tackle a kid right now, which is good. It might change down the road, but if it doesn't, that's fine too. He's genuinely, and we say this all the time and it's cliche. He's the biggest, hardest kid, that I've ever been around. And he's only 8 years old. And, we sit around and we ask ourselves why 100 times. And we've kind of driven ourselves crazy with that. But then we've also, you step back and see the lives already that he's touching. And it's like, you know what, there's a reason for everything. And we're just kind of in the middle of our valley right now, but we're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel and kind of realize why we're going through that valley. And, he has been our rock, honestly, through this whole process. And without him and how he's reacting, I don't really know how we would get through it.
Yeah. So he has an older brother and then a younger sister, right? How old is sister?
Yes, sir.
She's 5.
She's 5. And tell me about, so this describing Jensen Lee as you have, I feel like he's probably a pretty protective and nurturing older brother to his sister. Is that right?
Very much so.
How would you describe his relationship with both his sister and brother?
Well,
they fight like cats and dogs.
Oh yeah, they fight nonstop.
Yeah.
But I will say this: we got to St. Jude's, and man, St. Jude's it's just blown us away. We got there, they got us right into a room. Jensen Lee. And looking back now, I didn't realize it at the time, but he was in pretty rough shape. Had a lot of swelling and bruising, and we look back at pictures now, but. We get him checked into a room. Doctors are coming in and out nonstop all night. And we finally get him settled down. It was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning at this point. And he's laying up there in his little hospital bed in his baby Yoda jammies. And he looked at me and Cassie and he's like, I want my Bubby and Sissy. And I mean, we hadn't been gone from home for, 6, 7, 8 hours. And that's what he asked for from day one. He said, I wanted my Bubby and Sissy. And they may fight all the time, but when it came down to it, and he wanted his mom and dad there, don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
He didn't ask for us.
Yeah.
He asked for his brother and his sister. And luckily, we've been blessed down here to where his sister, Charlie, has been able to stay with us in some outside housing. And so I think that's really helped him through the healing process, is having her here. And they only fight a couple times a day, but that's mainly because he doesn't really have the energy to fight right now, which is, It's kind of a blessing in disguise and some sort. But yeah, him and his brother and sister, they're about as thick as they come.
Yeah. It's amazing how that when you're not at home, relationships bring home to you. Like it's the relationships that are home. And so having brother and sister, having mom and dad, while you're not sleeping in your own bed and the everyday doesn't look like the quote normal of home, there's something comforting and feeling like home when the relationships are there, when those close relationships are there. So let's get into a little bit of Jensen Lee's journey from a medical standpoint. So a lot of times when we're talking with families, we're talking with them when they're down the road a little bit in their medical journey. But this is really raw for you guys, really new. We're recording this at the very end of October, and Jensen Lee's diagnosis is not even a month old at this point. So tell us a little bit, before we get into the diagnosis and exactly what that is, tell us a little bit about what led up to recognition of something's not quite right here and we're getting checked out. What were some of those things that showed up?
Well, see, that's the craziest part about the whole thing, is that he had 0 symptoms whatsoever. And to go even more into that, back in February of this year, he was actually diagnosed with alpha-gal, and it's an autoimmune disorder that he got from a tick bite. The previous would have been the summer of 2019. Or the fall of 2019, he got a tick bite. And after that tick bite, we just started noticing that he was getting a lot of stomach aches, a lot of constipation, abdominal pains. And so we finally took him in for testing. I think it was in January of 2020. I'm sorry. It was 2020 when he got the tick bite. And then January of 2021, this year, we took him in for some allergy testing, and they ran all kinds of labs, took all kinds of blood work, and they figured out that he had what's called alpha-gal, and it's
an allergy that causes an allergy to red meat, mammal byproducts.
Very rare in kids. I think it's becoming more common in adults. But so anyways, we've been dealing with that. He can only eat certain things. He's a rock star with that. He knows what he can and can't eat. But we do, he does slip up every now and then. And so he'll get really bad, constipation, and his thyroids will swell, which is a side effect of the alpha-gal, his lymph nodes. So I had actually just got off of work. It was like September 25th or 24th, something like that. And I was going deer hunting, and I was sitting out there in the woods, and Cassie texted me and said that Jensen Lee had some lymph nodes swell up in his neck, which wasn't really uncommon with his alpha-gal. So I was like, well, it is what it is. She said that she had made him an appointment for the next day, and we would go get him checked out. He said they didn't hurt him, and they moved. They weren't stationary, which, they say as long as they're moving, generally you're okay. And then she texted me back just a few minutes later and said that there was another one that had popped up. So now he had two in his throat. And we had actually just dealt with an injury to our 13-year-old boy, Jack, in a football game. And so we were kind of like on the overly cautious at this point, So we're like, well, we'll just take him to urgent care in Springfield. So I left the woods, came home early, dropped the kids off at Dad's house, actually, and me and Cassie took Jensen Lee up to urgent care, where they just ran some blood work. The kid had no symptoms. He wasn't tired. He wasn't bruising. He had all the energy in the world for an 8-year-old kid. Slept good, ate good, zero symptoms other than his lymph nodes swelled up one night. So we take him to urgent care, and they run some blood tests, and we're there for, hour or two. Doctor comes in and says, all your blood work looks great. White cell, red cell, hemoglobin, everything looks great. He's probably got an allergic reaction. We're going to send you home with some medicine. We're like, great. And I remember Cassie actually looked at me and said, at least we can sleep tonight, knowing that it's nothing serious.
Right.
This was on a Friday afternoon. This is a Thursday night. So doctor leaves the room. He comes right back in. He wasn't out of the room for a minute, 2 minutes tops. And he said, hold on just a second. He said they found some abnormalities in his blood work, and they don't know what it is right now. So that's the first time that he brought out the L word, and it was leukemia. And so we're freaking out right off the bat, and we're actually at the hospital until 3:00 that morning. And they finally send us home, and they said that they're going to send the blood work to hematologists and pathologists the following day, which was that Friday, and that they would call us the next morning. So we go home. We got home about 4:00 that morning. They call us back at like 7:45 and ask us to come right back up there. So we drop the kids off at school, take Jensen Lee right back up to Mercy, which is actually the St. Jude affiliate in Springfield. And we meet with the doctors at Mercy St. Jude. And actually, St. Jude's calling us right now. So
yeah, go ahead.
You go ahead.
I'll continue. But so we go right back up there, and we meet with the doctors, and the doctor comes in, and this is nothing against them whatsoever. But doctor walks in and says, right off the bat, he said, I don't think this is anything serious. He said, we don't think it's leukemia. We're going to run some more tests today, but he's like, I think he just has an allergic reaction. They had actually scheduled a lot more in-depth tests that day. And he said with how good his blood work looked that they weren't even going to run any of those tests. So basically, they told us, hey, we don't think this is leukemia. And this is,
you think you're getting good news, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the doctors that look at this stuff day in and day out. And they just told us that, he's 90% sure that it's not leukemia. So we're celebrating, we take Jensen Lee out to eat. We've been up all night. So they ran some more blood work, and everything okay? They ran some more blood work, and they said, just to be safe, we're going to run our own blood work, and we'll call you back this afternoon with some results. He said, go home, get some rest. Don't worry about it too much. So we go home, and Cassie and I just passed out. We're exhausted,
Yep.
mentally, physically exhausted, to a point that we didn't know that we had at that time. And they call us back about 3:30 that afternoon. And the doctors said that the blood work that they took today or that day was more concerning than the blood work that they had initially got on Thursday night. And he again said, we don't think it's leukemia, but we don't know what it is. Basically what they said is they had actually brought in more doctors. So we had 4 doctors looking at his blood work. And the way they explained it to us was that 2 of them thought it might be leukemia and 2 of them thought that it wasn't leukemia. So they were kind of on the fence. But he said that they were going to have to run a definitive test that was going to take until Monday to get a definitive answer. So we basically had to wait the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not knowing whether or not our kid had leukemia. And like
that was the hardest weekend of our life.
Yeah. So what's going on in your mind? How are you processing that? Who are you talking to? What are the conversations that you're having to try to make it to Monday?
I'm a pessimist. So I'm worst case scenario. I'm freaking out, can't sleep. My dad's a pastor and I've got pastors at home that I'm really close to. And, both of our families are extremely religious and we're praying. And, it's weird. One minute you're 100% confident, my kid, I see everybody else's kids and, they go through stuff and I see commercials and it's like, we pray for those kids from a distance. My kid can't have leukemia. It can't happen. It's just, it's too close to home.
It's really real and really personal really quickly.
Very.
It's a very humbling experience to say the least. One minute you're like, there ain't no way this is not happening. And then the next minute you're just bawling to the point where you can't catch your breath. And you're like, what if, and you're thinking worst case scenario. And the thing, I guess the hardest part for me was in those 3 days, to me, hearing the C word or the L word, cancer, leukemia, I thought that was it. I thought that was an end sentence, because you hear it, it scares you as a parent and as a person and all the negative stuff that you hear and say. And the whole weekend, I was like, if he has it, I just lost my baby boy. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was the hardest part. Not knowing how far cancer treatments have come, not only with St. Jude's, which is, in my opinion, the best place in the world right now, but, just all across the board. It's so advanced now that, it's not the end of the world. And it sucks, and it rocked our world, hearing what was actually going on. But so anyways, we hang up the phone with the doctor that Friday afternoon and, we're just kind of in shock, in and out. And Jensen Lee's he's home with us and he can kind of tell something's going on. And Cassie and I look at each other and we're like, we got to stay as normal as possible this weekend. We don't want to freak him out. We still don't believe that this is what it is. So we actually go to a hometown football game that Friday night, the varsity football game, just like we would any other Friday night.
Try to treat it like a Friday.
You have to, honestly. I told her, I was like, we can't sit at home. I was like, I'll drive myself crazy, which I did at the football game too. But, we get to the football game and Jensen Lee played all night. He played in the end zone, off the end of the end zone with his friends, played football, tackle foot, just all night long he was playing. And I actually had of course, people knew something was going on at this point. We're a small, tight-knit community. And I actually had one parent come up to me and said, there's no way that boy's sick. Like he's running, he's playing, he's laughing, he's got all the energy in the world. And, I was like, I don't think so either. So we go the whole weekend.
I want to pause you real quick right there. Cassie, Taylor said he's a pessimist and that was that's how he processed and kind of went into the weekend. How were you handling things through the weekend?
I'm an optimist.
So you kind of help offset each other there. Yeah.
Realist, but mostly optimist. And I have just the mindset, like the same, like my kid doesn't have this, my baby doesn't have this, but if he does, then it's okay. Like we're, God's on our side and we're going to be okay. It was a huge roller coaster of emotions. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I had my moments.
Yeah, sure.
But, I don't know. I'm an optimist. So everything's going to work out and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Until Monday came and they actually words we didn't want to hear,
Yeah. So tell us how Monday went down.
Monday morning, we said we were going to send Jensen Lee to school. We wanted him to feel, comfortable. And, we were standing in believing that he didn't have it anyways. So that was it. And it was kind of weird. Monday morning, he didn't want to get out of bed.
He was tired.
He was lethargic. And that was the first, I knew then in my heart, that he had it, but I didn't want to accept it. So we let him sleep, took the other two kids to school, and we're just sitting there. They never told us what time they would call. All they said is, we'll call you on Monday. Luckily, they called early. It was shortly after 8 o'clock, 8:30 maybe. Cassie hadn't been home for very long. And the doctor, confirmed that they were pretty positive that it was B-Cell ALL leukemia. They had already been in contact with St. Jude's. We were ready to go. I started, going to start packing right away. And they were kind of like, well, you kind of pump the brakes a little bit. They have to make sure there's rooms available and, all this stuff. And it's just, I don't know, just hearing those words over the phone and, your whole life stops, it
was hard.
So you went from a Thursday morning being Thursday, just like any other day, to Monday by lunch, having a leukemia diagnosis for your 8-year-old and trying to figure out what the next steps are and planning to be away from home for whoever knows for however long to get treatment.
Yeah, it was hard.
And so you guys live in Ava, Missouri. So if you're listening and you're not familiar, that's near Springfield. So kind of in the southwest corner of the state. And St. Jude's that they sent you to is in Memphis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And so tell me what that process was like of here's what the treatment plan is and kind of what the next steps came after that Monday call.
Well, after we talked to the doctor Monday morning, we kind of came to the realization that we weren't going to get an actual diagnosis until we got to St. Jude's.
We knew he had leukemia, but that, there are so many different types that we don't have that answer yet. Yeah. All we know is that he does have leukemia at that point.
So shortly after we talked to the doctor, Cassie and I still processing everything. We're making phone calls and we were able to slow down just a little bit. And, we started getting some things in order, packing, because we start to realize like, hey, we're probably going to be there for a little bit. So, Cassie starts doing laundry, making sure everything's clean and packing. I run into town, start running errands and, getting everything situated for that.
Getting the other kids taken care of.
Figuring out what, and we have a great family, great support system, in Ava. And we couldn't do it without them. There's just no other way to put it. But we ended up, Jensen Lee went with my dad, Ron, and my mom, Lacey, for the afternoon. And they went to Walmart. And I don't know how they had enough room in that car when they got home for everything that Nana bought him to take to Memphis to St. Jude's.
Grandparents are good at that spoiling stuff, aren't they?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So I think we finally left Ava about 4 o'clock that afternoon and headed to Memphis. And they called us because they told it. We still didn't know if there was a room available. But I told Cassie and we had both agreed that it's like, hey, I'm going to go to Memphis. I don't care if we have to stay in a hotel for a few days. I know that my kid has leukemia now. So
as soon as they're an opening, we're getting him in.
Yeah. I want to be as close to the best place in the world as I can be whenever that bed opens up.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if it was after we left.
It was before.
Or right before we left, they actually called and verified, hey, we have a room. As soon as you get here, you can check in. And we're like, okay, it's going to be like any other hospital visit. So we drive to Memphis. It's a 4-hour drive. We get there in about 3:15. Pull in, check in. They get us right into a room. And, man, it's just overwhelming. Doctors and nurses coming in, and your little boy's sitting up there on the, hospital bed. He thought we were going to get to stay in a hotel room, which is what Dad promised him, beforehand. And
hospitals don't have pools typically, so there's a little bit of a letdown. Yeah.
I mean, we just jumped right in, and they just hit the ground running. We hadn't been in the room. I mean, they actually walked us in the room, and just right off the bat, they stayed with him and started running tests. And it was actually, so we got there on Monday night, right around 8:00. And then I guess it was Tuesday that he went into surgery, and he had his port put in his chest, where he receives his chemo and other medicines and stuff. And then
they did a bone marrow and a spinal tap.
They did the bone marrow and spinal tap. And then I think it was Tuesday nights. There was a team of doctors that came in. 3 or 4 doctors came in, and Jensen Lee was asleep from his surgery. And that's whenever they gave us the actual diagnosis of B-Cell ALL, and I'll never forget. And it sounds weird, but B-Cell ALL they said it's the most common, and it's also the most curable cancer in children. So I felt, and you can't really say that you felt a relief that, you just heard your kid has cancer, but optimistically, at least it's the best cancer, right, most curable, and we're in the best place in the world to fix it.
Right. Especially if just a few days before that C word in your mind was a death sentence.
Oh, I thought it was it. Sincerely, I thought it was like I just lost my boy, and the roller coaster that we've been on in the last month, you can't even really put that into words,
So tests you guys arrive on Monday night, and tests on Tuesday, ports in by Tuesday or Wednesday, and then treatments start pretty much immediately.
Treatments started first thing Wednesday. And people know a lot more than me. I kind of try to block everything out and just kind of take it day by day. She's more of a literal. They give you a pamphlet of everything, and she's studying it. And I'm like, I don't care. Just we're going to do our treatments. We're going to whip it. We're going to go home, and, we got to get back for deer season. That's how my head works. But what we're in is what they call the induction phase. It's the first 28 days of chemo. And we're still in it. We're almost done with it, but this is what we're in right now. So that's
the goal is remission by the end of 28.
Mm-hmm.
So we started our first treatment on that Wednesday, and that's day 1 of the 28-day induction phase. And it's just been a grind ever since then, man. I mean, he'll go days where he's fine and he takes the chemo like a champ, and then there's days where you got to carry him to the bathroom, and it's hard. But
and how often is he receiving treatment?
The first 2 weeks, it was only once, maybe 2-3 times a week tops. I think the most he got was 3 in a week. But this last week, he's had chemo every day for 4 straight days. We've had 3 days off.
Actually, he still takes
pill. So he's had chemo every day for the last week.
Yeah.
And then
this week is the same way.
Yeah.
So starting tomorrow, all the way to Saturday, we'll actually have to go to St. Jude's, and he'll get IV treatments for the next 4 days. So the last 2 weeks has really been, the brunt, I think, of his chemo in the first 28 days.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true of your experience, but for almost anyone who's had to take a kid to the doctor's office, you're used to waiting, and you're used to frustrating experiences and all these other things. Cassie, as a mom, I'm curious for you, how did it feel to show up at St. Jude's and to have this sense that they hit the ground running and taking care of your boy is top priority for these doctors and nurses and those that are caring for him?
It's amazing how much St. Jude cares. Walking in, you expect what you would get at any other hospital, which is it can be a very frustrating experience as a parent. They haven't stopped. I mean, he has a team dedicated to him that works to make him better every single day. They meet every single day, and they communicate with us every single day. His alpha gal, they're learning from him because our team of doctors have never treated a kid with alpha gal. And alpha gal is in a lot of medications, mammal byproduct, or not alpha gal, but mammal byproducts are in a lot of medications. And,
interesting. Yeah.
They're learning things from him, and St. Jude is truly an amazing place.
I won't forget the night the team of 3 or 4 doctors came in and gave us our actual diagnosis. Cassie and I were sitting together. They pulled up chairs. They were really personable. And whenever the doctor gave us the actual diagnosis and said, your kid has leukemia.
He has B-cell, cancer.
Of course, we started crying, and the doctor started crying himself, talking to us. I mean, and as soon as we seen that, it's like, you know what? These people aren't putting on a show. He's not just a number on their stat sheets of kids that are in their hospital. These doctors and these nurses, they care about each and every one of these kids, and I think that's a huge testament to them. I think it's a huge testament to the progress that they've made in treating childhood cancer, is because, they care about every single kid, and they want to make sure every single kid goes home.
They care about my baby.
Mm-hmm. And in the midst of a season that I think, I would assume that the term unknown doesn't begin to touch what you guys have felt over that roller coaster. There's got to be a little sense of assurance and encouragement when you see and feel that same level of connectedness that those doctors are caring for your baby boy as if it were their own.
Yeah.
If this is your first time listening, or if you're not familiar with Go Shout Love, we do amazing things for amazing families with kids on rare medical journeys. Now, every month, we shout love for these families through the sale of creative apparel inspired by the kiddos. This month's Brave Design is inspired by Jensen Lee, who's a kind, compassionate, and yes, very brave 8-year-old from Ava, Missouri. Every purchase in November will be used to help cover the cost of travel and housing expenses for Jensen Lee's treatments. Visit our website, goshout.love, to support Jensen Lee through the purchase of a t-shirt, sweater, tumbler, or one of my personal favorites, the hoodie, extremely soft, very warm, perfect for this time of year. And there's also some other items there as well. Remember, this is part 1 of 2 episodes. Please stay tuned for part 2 because there's more great content coming up surrounding Jensen Lee and his family. If you have a second, please rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, and then share with someone. This story can go and bless someone, and also it deserves to be told. It is Jensen's story, and this is one of the reasons that we do what we do, so that his story can be shared and that we can further, louder, Go Shout Love. Thank you.